Hello, everyone. Welcome to our virtual edition of our year-round screening series, Film Independent Presents. I am Jeremy Aguilera-Gaudette with Film Independent. And before we get started, I want to give some thanks to our awesome supporters who make this year-round screening series possible for us. Thank you to our lead sponsor, the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, and to our screening partner, Vision Media. I'm really excited to talk to our guest today about her really beautiful short documentary, A Life Too Short. So please help me all the way from Pakistan, Safyah Usmani. Hello.
Hello, Jeremy. Hello. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Let's get right to it. I'm wondering if you want to talk a little bit about how you got started as a documentary filmmaker.
As a documentary filmmaker, well, that's interesting. I got my undergrad training in storytelling and filmmaking, and I realized through my training that I was interested, yes, in experimenting with the visual form, but I was also very interested in getting real life stories and, connecting them both. So for some reason, I found more creative gratification in telling documentaries, and it was also coming from this space of, and that goes a little, earlier than just my undergrad training. Even as a kid, I always found myself speaking up, standing up and speaking up for the people who I thought weren't ready to speak up for themselves or needed some help, at our homes. I would be wondering about why women would get to eat in the second go while men would get to feast in the first go, whenever we'd have parties and all. Then I was thinking about several other issues that were getting to me, and I really wanted to talk about them. So I think it was ever since I was a kid that I really wanted to talk about certain social issues that really spoke to me, and I wanted to be a voice for the marginalized community. So I think in the form of documentaries, I got the right avenue to really bring up some of the issues that I really wanted to talk about.
Nice. So I guess with that in mind and thinking about that social commentary that you wanted to explore, how did you sort of come across Kandeels' story? She was sort of blew up as this major social media celebrity in Pakistan, one of the first, as you mentioned early on in the documentary. When did you decide that you felt this story was really important to tell?
There is one more thing. As a filmmaker, as a storyteller, I've always been interested in the concept of identity. How is it shaped? What are the factors involved in shaping them? What are the consequences for different people coming from different socioeconomic backgrounds for daring to dream what their identity should be and how it should be like. Having said that, with that framework, well, a lot of people, including me, did know about Kandil Baloj because she wasn't just she was Pakistan's first social media star. So we had all had a chance to have a look at, a couple of her videos that went viral, if not really following her as an ardent follower, but we all had, some kind of exposure to her content. And it was only after she was murdered that I realized what a privilege it is. I realized again that what a privilege it is for a lot of us to have the opportunity or the ability to make a choice for ourselves without having the fear of the repercussions, that those choices could bring for us. In Kandeel's case, it was about life and death. And it wasn't the only story. Fine, it got, while it was something that a lot of us got talking about, but it wasn't certainly the only story of its kind. There's so many girls in many parts of Pakistan, and then having been working for past many years in many parts of the world as well, where they find themselves in this kind of scenario where they find themselves restricted with their choices and with the fear if they go with their heart and what their mind is telling them to do, they might have to face death or serious punishment.
Building upon that, what you said, I was thinking a lot about social media celebrities because that's a very big thing in the United States. So many people are famous through various viral videos and various reasons that sometimes don't make much sense. And I thought it was interesting that, you could sort of pinpoint the first person to do this in Pakistan. Whereas I mean, obviously with some research, I don't know who that would be in the US and maybe elsewhere in the world. So I'm wondering, you know, as you were sort of exploring this documentary and filming it, what you found surprising or interesting about any social media similarities between Pakistan and the US or in the rest of the world, and sort of what was it that specifically that Kandeel was able to capture in that moment to become this very, very well-known internet celebrity in Pakistan?
So Kandeel, I'm gonna put this up first thing. Social media wasn't Kandeel's first choice of media to explore herself. She only chanced upon social media after she had seen rejections and failures and on different other avenues, electronic media to be particular. When she chanced upon social media, what she realized was that she could take her sexual agency in her hand. And because earlier on, when she was really trying to get into the electronic media, because all she wanted to do was become famous, and she thought that she had a talent of singing really well. So what she wanted to go ahead and do was sing religious hymns. And so she would, go to different television channels, and she wasn't accepted for that. And what she found herself in a situation was that she was asked for sexual favors in return for her religious hymns to be broadcasted on national television. Now that came full circle when she chanced upon social media, because she was like, all right, I can take my sexual agency in my own hands. Now here's the catch. She wasn't the only presence on social media sphere within Pakistani, society. But she was a bold one. What she was doing was she decided she's going to go against the grain. And what she decided was she's going to create her own sexual agency. What she decided was that she's going to take the matters in her hand. And she really wanted to look in the eyes of the people and go like, oh, you don't like this, but this is me, too bad. You'll have to accept it for what it's worth. Coming back to your question, the difference, I won't be able to really pinpoint what's the difference between Kandeel and all the other social media stars in the world. I think there definitely is a similarity, which is about, having the ability to dream, then having the guts to dare to go forward for those dreams, and just go out about and be bold in embracing who you are. That definitely is the similarity. And so the beauty of social media space is that you can go forward and express yourself however you want to. That is one thing. And I think while that was the cause for Kandeel's fame, because she got a lot of followers, a lot of people who loved her for her, bold attitude, for her, sense of freedom of expression, she also gained a lot of haters and trolls for the same reason, because we're talking about this concept in a very in a patriarchal conservative society where the first thought is just follow the rules, especially if you're a woman. Just be quiet and say yes to whatever the social, patriarchal norm is, or patriarchal expectation is around how a woman should be and how should she be. Kandeel was really doing was challenging all of those norms and using social media as this powerful tool for herself.
Now, when you sort of approached and started the idea to make this documentary and started your filming and the process and everything, did you receive sort of any backlash from people in Pakistan? Sort of, why are you, making a documentary about her? Sort of that polar opposite. Probably people, being very happy, that you were shedding a light on this, and some people probably not very happy. And I was just wondering how you approached sort of the sensitivity of the subject matter when making this documentary, and if there was any outside influence that you had to be cognizant of.
Yes. First thing first, it wasn't made when I was working on this film. I didn't really make the news very public because I wanted to be smart about it. One. Two, yes, there was people did have questions about my choice of character. Why am I talking about Kandil? People were like, oh, so you think she was a hero? Or, what do you think she had to offer to our country? What do you think she did for our country? And then there was another thing. When I was in the research process of the film, I went down to Multan and I was just researching on, because I was told when her brother, along with the help of his friends and cousins, murdered Kandil and strangled her to death, what they were planning was to take her dead body and dump it in the river nearby. That was a bizarre thing for me to find out. So I really wanted to know what really goes on in someone's mind when they think about just dumping their own sister's dead body in a river. And that was something I was asking all the journalists over there. And the first question or the first response that I would get from all of them would be, well, there's nothing new about that story. There's so many other girls here who were killed in the name of honor or killed for the choices that they've made and dumped in this very river that you were asking about. So why do you want to talk about Kandil? So yes, there was a lot of curiosity around, that why is it that I'm picking Kandil, or why is it that I'm choosing to go with this protagonist for my film? The reason why I didn't get a huge backlash, or I haven't received that as of yet, is because while during the production of the film, which was definitely for more than 3.5 years, I did not make the news public. I was very quiet and I kept a hush about it while I was working on it. So perhaps that's why.
I thought, you used a lot of, with Kandil, you had a lot of archival footage to go through and to use her social media posts, her television interviews. Yet I think you captured her voice very well through the use of her social media posts. Like I
Thank
did
you.
get a real good sense of who she was, her vulnerabilities and her strengths and everything. So I was wondering if you talk about your process of, how you went through her social media archive and television archive and other things that you learned, and how your process of putting this together, along with other stuff you've shot and interviews.
Sure. Thank you for saying that, because that was my original intent as a filmmaker, and that was a constant conscious decision that I was making, that I wanted to go back to how Kandil, what Kandil really wanted to say in that, or what would she like to say in given, that scenario. Um, Unfortunately, as soon as Kandil was murdered, a lot of her social media was taken down. But fortunately, me and my team, we were able to secure a lot of that database. We were, taking screenshots of those comments. We were trying to download, the videos, all the videos that she was making. So we had ample amount of resource gathered and secure for us to use in our film. So we were really fortunate that way. Secondly, because it was a conscious decision at every point for me to go back to Kandil, and I was obviously aware that my protagonist wasn't there for me. If any question would turn up, I cannot definitely go back to her. But what she had done was that she had left a digital legacy behind. And I could use that to my advantage to show Kandil's most raw form. And so she really, in a way, even after she was gone, she was really helping me to tell her story. And I was setting out to look for her help every time I would have a question. Obviously, I had her friends and her family to help me with the answers, but at no point did I ever completely depend on the characters that I've used in the film. The one character, however, that I completely depended upon was Kandil herself. And like I said, her digital legacy was always there to help me out in the shape of her comments, in the shape of her videos, in the shape of her TV appearances, or in the shape of her, phone calls that she would take with her followers.
You mentioned having her family there, and I think out of all the sort of talking head interviews that you had, her father and her mother's interviews were very powerful, and I think that, they really added a lot to the film. So, I'm curious if you can talk about, I think in documentary filmmaking, one of sometimes the tricky things is approaching a subject that you want to interview gaining their trust, creating a safe space where they can talk openly and freely. So can you talk about that process for you in particular with her mom and her dad? Because they sort of, in the film, it comes across that they were very eager maybe to speak with you, but that might not be the case at first.
At first, yes, for sure. Access is always difficult, especially concerning, in such cases where, their daughter, they knew that she was considered a controversial figure in Pakistan. So they could not definitely just trust anyone entering their house and asking for an act, for their opinion, or a film which would go on for the next 3.5 years. So it wasn't that I just met them once or twice. I would keep going back to them after a couple of months. I actually saw them aging in these last 4 years, in the beginning, at the very beginning, the first interview that I did with Kandeels' father, his eyesight was all right. And then towards the very last interview that I did with him, he could hardly see anymore because he had cried so much in these past 4 years, seeking for justice for his daughter and just missing her so much that he had lost his eyesight. Even the mother, I saw her aging, how she can no more stand up straight, and how, there's a hunch right there. Coming back to the question of access, yes, definitely. And having been working for so many years, actually, forget working for so many years, just having this sense of empathy and just having this sense of sensitivity, I really think it's really important to have that as a human, not just as a filmmaker, but as a human. It's so important to have those feelings, to have a sense of empathy, to be able to sympathize with the other person and their pain. And Jeremy, if the other person is able to see that in you, then you as a filmmaker then don't have to really do much about it, Then they open up to you, and then they give you more than you had probably planned for, or you probably ever expected. I think in this case, what worked was they saw that I wasn't just someone who was coming in and, for a sound bite, a sensational kind of a soundbite and just stepping out and never looking back. I kept going back to them. I was in constant touch with them. If they cried, obviously in the film, you can see the father crying. You can't see me sobbing at the back of the camera, right? So it was always like they could see that I could feel their pain. They could see that I'm here to tell their story. They could see that I'm not coming with any ulterior motive, which I wasn't. I just wanted them to be able to express what they were going through and to be able to celebrate their daughter however they wanted to celebrate her. And I think that what's worked out for us.
Have the parents seen the documentary yet?
They've seen bits and pieces, because every time I would go back to them, I would try and show them that this is what we do. Sometimes because the father almost also started to lose his memory, so he won't remember what was it that we talked about last time. So I would have to bring back okay, this is what you talked about, uncle. And so that they've seen bits and pieces, but not the entire film as of yet.
Another important person in this film is the religious cleric, Mufti Kavi. And I'm curious, I believe, were all the interviews you showed with him archival interviews, or did you ever meet him in person and speak with him?
So all the major interviews that are there in the film, they were done by me and my team.
Okay.
So I basically met him twice.
Got it. Okay. That's so on the other end, it's one thing to get access maybe to Kandeels' parents or her family, or speak to her, personal photographer or whomever. How did you approach Mufti Kavi to interview him? Was it easy to get him to be on camera? What was that process like for, when you're making a documentary film and you're getting that other side, sort of the villain, if you will, in this film?
Surprisingly, Jeremy, it was very easy. He's this kind of a person who's always hungry for exposure, who's always hungry for fame. So I don't know how much fame was he expecting from my project, but he definitely, I just called him once. And it's also that I didn't I didn't go up to him independently. I had some sources, so that they could connect us. And his concern in the beginning was, that he would only give me time, probably like 15 minutes. And I really wanted more. And you won't believe it, when we started off, the interview carried on for good 2 or 3 hours. And I was the one who had to remind him that, you weren't willing to give me any time at the beginning, and you said you had a busy schedule. But in his case, what worked was, this also is something as a filmmaker we gauge, about certain people. It's difficult to get some stories out of them. Certain people really love to talk about themselves, right? So this is one such person we are talking about. In his case, it was just about, so what happened? I want to know your side of the story. And then every time, there would be something that I could contest it with, I would present that. And the aim in his case was just to get as much information that he was willing to give to me exclusively. So it wasn't that difficult, I would say.
And I guess that sort of makes sense, sort of thinking back on the film and what little I gleaned from his personality through the film. It does make sense that he's sort of also fame hungry, but in a different way than Kandil was, and her
There
desire
is a
to,
there is a part in the yes, definitely. There's a part in the film, um, or was it a part? Definitely something he says in his interview for sure. I just can't remember if I've included that in the film, but he says something where he compares his followers with Kandeel's followers. So he's like, Mufti Abdul Kavi is also a big name. He also has millions of followers. People want to take selfies with him. So this is quite reflective of his state of mind and how he looks at himself.
um, for sure. And I'm sort of linking it a little bit to a both sides argument that people might make, but they are not the same people. They are not fighting for the same thing at all. And I think that dynamic is subtly played through the short, and I think it comes across nicely. I want to talk about, so this film's getting distributed through MTV Documentary Films. And I know Sheila Nevins is a big supporter of your short and the work. So I'm curious how that relationship came about and how this distribution through MTV Documentaries came about.
I absolutely love Sheila Nevins. She has been so amazing and so supportive. Um, so my mentor and also the producer of the film, Sharmina Betchinoy, she helped connect with Sheila. She helped me connect with Sheila, and she was the one who was basically, one who knew Sheila, and she helped us out. So Sheila has been supportive and amazing throughout the process. And actually, I got to meet Sheila right before the whole pandemic situation um, came about, which was March last year. So yes, I think it's just been a beautiful, amazing journey where, I have got so much of such great support and great advices from both Sheila as well as Sharmeen.
Nice. That's great. That's great. That's great feeling to have that support and that trust, and now a distribution, which is fantastic. We're nearing the end, but I do want to ask sort of, Kandil was murdered in 2016, right?
That's right. That's
And
right.
so it's been about 4 years since that
Yes.
happened. And I know after,
Yes.
you mentioned in the film, you mentioned that the Pakistani government sort of changed the laws around honor killings, and that you can maybe if I get this right, the families maybe can still um, forgive the person who did the honor killing, but they can't, forgive them from going to court or being tried and sentenced to prison. So, in the last 4 years, other than that, have you seen any other changes? Has her legacy sort of lived on in any way that's empowered other women to sort of take up the mantle and do similar things to her? What's changed in like the 4 years?
Uh, yes, definitely. Couple of things actually. Um, she became this, I don't even think she knew during her lifetime that she had turned into this strong representative of equality or freedom of expression, which really resonated after her death and after her murder. We saw, we have this women rights movement that's happening in Pakistan, and we see um, women coming out in huge numbers, and men as well, and holding Kandeels face masks, holding Kandeels billboards. She has almost turned into this face of this movement, and I don't think she was setting out to do that. Another thing that has really happened is because of her digital presence, such bold digital presence, where she was unabashedly just being herself without really having the fear of what would people say. Now she gave way to a new generation of social media stars. She taught the audience how to be an audience, how to accept content that they may not be expecting, but to celebrate it and to accept it. And she also taught the youth to just go out there and just be themselves and speak their minds and dream about, what they want to be, without really being scared of the repercussions, because that is where true success and strength lie.
That is a very powerful and important legacy. Um, I'm glad to hear that. Um, Safyah, thank you so much for joining me today and talking about the film. Thanks everyone for joining us at home today to watch this Q&A. A Life Too Short is going to world premiere on January 22nd on Pluto TV. Please, if you didn't get a chance to check it out during this Film Independent Presents screening, please make sure you check out this film. It is really important to watch, and it's very beautifully done. So Safyah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.